You're watching YouTube, the cable access of the 21st century. It's Wednesday, it's 4 p.m. where I am, and it's time to talk about movies and answer your questions. Welcome to Dan's World. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Dan's World. I will start off this stream by asking what I always do. How do I look? How do I sound? I've been trying to work on things here on the streaming side, but, I think with mixed success. But as long as you can mostly see me and mostly hear me, then I think we're going to have a pretty good show. We've got a lot to talk about today. We've got the official sale of Warner Brothers, which is now a thing. We don't know who it's going to be to, although I think we kind of do. But it is officially for sale. So I'm going to look at that announcement, and where I think that Warner Brothers' actual priorities are. And I don't think it's going to shock you. Also, your questions. I want you to send in your questions. Leave them down in the comments below. If you want to send in a super chat, I will definitely get to your question today. And then if we've got time towards the end of the show, as always, I will awkwardly scan through and try to see what I have missed. I already see something in the comments today. Nathan Payne says, Dan, I think you should buy Warner Brothers. Well, Nathan, I just got the house. And I actually did some calculations, and even with my new house payment, I think I would be about a few $1 billion short. Otherwise, I would seriously give it a consideration, because I don't think I could do any worse than the new owners might be doing. But that's what we're going to talk about. Before we do that, though, I wanted to mention something. There was some news. I didn't do the live show last week because I was out of town. I was on the road seeing Frankenstein, Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. You can see that review here on the channel right now. You can see my review of Shelby Oaks, which is Chris Stuckman's movie, here on the channel right now. But I wanted to acknowledge a couple people who passed away in the last week. One of them was Diane Keaton. Diane Keaton, I think, was a fantastic actress. She rose to fame in the 70s. She was in some of the best movies of the 70s. She won an Academy Award for Annie Hall. She was fantastic as Kay in all of the Godfather movies. And she was always somebody who I love to see pop up in different movies, different kinds of movies, different genres, drama, comedy. I love that she stayed relevant throughout her career. The 90s was, the era of the First Wives Club, and going into the romantic comedies, going into the 2000s and 2010s, and then teaming up with all of the other actresses from the 70s in comedies in the last several years. This was one of those people that you just take for granted is there. And it was a shock to the system to find out that she had passed away, because she has been so good for so long in so many different movies. If you're not acquainted with Diane Keaton's work, you absolutely should be, because I thought that she was a fantastic actress. And then a name, something that may have passed you by, because this is a name that generally kind of goes to, although if you're watching this show, you're probably a pretty hardcore cinephile, but I had to bring this up. Drew Struzan sadly passed away just a few days ago. If you don't know the name, I guarantee you know the work. And if you're a movie fan, it's probable that at some point you have had a piece of Drew Struzan's artwork hanging on your wall, because I think that Drew Struzan was, and I'm not exaggerating here, I think that in the modern movie era, Drew Struzan was to poster design what John Williams has been to modern movie music. It literally just, we could sit here for this entire hour and just look at some of his posters, and you would probably know each and every one of them. It kind of set the tone for modern style. This one has been in my house and was on my dorm room wall for many years. Back to the Future is a Drew Struzan poster. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone was a Drew Struzan poster. So this wasn't just a guy who was making posters in the 80s. He was relevant for decades when a filmmaker wanted a movie poster, a poster that just felt like classic Hollywood, not classic in the sense of, the 30s and 40s, but I mean, today, modern, they went to Drew Struzan. This is one of my favorites, a very relevant movie because of the Halloween season, The Thing. I just think this is a fantastic poster. It sets you don't quite know what the movie's about, but it's a very eye-catching image. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Of course, Drew Struzan had a great relationship with Steven Spielberg, did a lot of his movies, did a lot of George Lucas's movies, did a lot of movies for Amblin. Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. I 100% had this poster on my wall when I was in high school, because this was like the cinematic event of the millennium, or the turning of the, going into the new millennium. And even movies that I watched when I was a kid that you may not be classics, Masters of the Universe, I had a VHS box with this poster on it, and I still think this is a great movie poster. And the very first movie that I ever saw, that I can ever remember seeing in a movie theater, An American Tail, was a Drew Struzan poster. Is one of those people who, again, you say that name and somebody might go, oh, I'm not quite sure who that is. Tell them who that is. But then when you go over the volume of work that he did over his career, people go like, oh, wait a minute. One guy did all of those posters? Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things. People are going to be looking at his work in 10 years, 50 years, 100 years. He did all the posters, not only for the Star Wars prequels, but the great posters for the Star Wars special editions, which I think in many ways are now the key art for a generation as far as the original 3 Star Wars films. Just an incredible legacy. And like I said, redefined the style and what people wanted from a movie poster. If it wasn't a Drew Struzan movie poster in the 80s, from the 80s forward, it was probably a poster that was trying to do that Drew Struzan style. Just incredible. So a big loss to the cinematic community in front of the camera with Diane Keaton, and with something that seems as insignificant but can be so meaningful as poster art, because those images become part of the conversation around a movie. So 2 really big losses, and of course, thoughts to their families and to their fans and everything else. And thanks to both of them for the legacy that they left and the footprint on movies in so many different ways. All right, let's transition now to the main story I want to talk about, and then we'll get to your questions, which is the official sale, it would appear, not an actual sale pending, but Warner Brothers announcing themselves, not industry reporting, nothing like that. Warner Brothers announcing that they are indeed open for business when it comes to selling the studio, or selling the networks, or selling both of them, or selling one of them. This was their official statement. They said, quote, while Warner Brothers Discovery continues to advance its previously announced separation of Warner Brothers and Discovery Global, remember they're splitting their movie studio and their over-the-air networks, its board of directors today announced it has initiated a review of strategic alternatives to maximize shareholder value in light of unsolicited interest the company has received from multiple parties for both the entire company and Warner Brothers. So that would be the film studio singularly, along with HBO Max, etc. Through this process, the Warner Brothers Discovery Board will evaluate a broad range of strategic options, which will include continuing to advance the company's planned separation to completion by mid-2026, a transaction for the entire company, or separate transactions for its Warner Brothers and or Discovery Global businesses. As part of the review, the company will also consider an alternative separation structure that would enable a merger of Warner Brothers and a spinoff of Discovery Global to our shareholders. So to summarize there, basically what they're saying is, whatever your offer is, we'll listen to it. You want to just take the studios and leave the networks? We'll listen to your offer. You want to buy everything? We'll listen to your offer. You want to just take the studio and then have the networks get shared to our shareholders? We'll listen to that offer. 2 different people want to buy the studio. One person wants to buy the studio. One person wants to buy the network. We'll listen to your offer. I mean, David Zaslav is basically at this point an auctioneer, give me 55. I mean, he's just taking whatever offer comes in. This has long been the speculation. If you go back to the Screen Junkies days, when David Zaslav first took over, we were talking about him taking over the studio with the merger with Discovery, etc. It has always been speculated that David Zaslav's plan was eventually to basically flip the company, to come in, to cut costs, to streamline the company, and to sell it. And then it looked like, well, maybe not, because it's had such a good year. The Warner Brothers Film Studios had such a good year, and they said they were going to split it off into different companies. But now, again, according to this statement, because of unsolicited interests, meaning people like Paramount Global, or what used to be Paramount Global, what's now Paramount Skydance, coming and saying, hey, we might want to buy your studio. They're like, you would? Yes, please. We're listening. I mean, it's just, you can see the saliva forming around David Zaslav's mouth here because he's so excited at the possibility of flipping this asset and making a whole bunch of money. And that's where not even I think the priorities are, it's where they say the priorities are. Just in that statement to shareholders, which had comments attributed to the studio, then some from Zaslav and other people, these were all of the mentions of what they wanted to do. A review of strategic alternatives to maximize shareholder value. Identify the best path forward to unlock the full value of our assets. Considering all opportunities to determine the best value for our shareholders. Taking these actions to broaden our scope is in the best interest of shareholders. That's who they're serving. They're shareholders, but also keep in mind the top executives at Warner Brothers, they get a massive payday with any kind of merger or transaction or purchase that happens. And I know a lot of people say like, well, yeah, no duh, Dan. It's business. Of course, they're going to operate in the best interest of their shareholders. But this is where I have a problem with the way that business is now intersecting with the entertainment industry, which is that I share a view, which David Zaslav does not share, by the way, and many people don't share. But I share a view that when you own something, when you take control over something that isn't just a company that makes a product, they're not making candy bars or widgets or whatever else. This is a movie studio. It is a movie studio with a legacy. It is a movie studio that has a history. It is a movie studio that has produced culturally significant films for a century now. I am of the opinion that when you take over ownership of something like that, you are a steward of that legacy. You owe some responsibility to that legacy. And when you're deciding what the future of that company is going to be, you should be considering how to protect that legacy. In an ideal world, that's how I think it should work because this is culturally significant. Movies, not all movies, but movies do mean something to a lot of people. They mean a lot to me. They mean a lot to a bunch of other people. They are able to illuminate. They're the empathy machine that Roger Ebert always talked about. They are important in ways that transcend getting maximum value for shareholders, but that's not how it works anymore. I know that studios have been owned by major companies for decades now, but there were always, it seemed to me, still people in positions of leadership at the studios, if not at the companies themselves, that did think about the artistic legacy of a studio and making sure that they are still producing things of merit and making sure that any potential sale or transaction is not going to harm that legacy. And I want to be very clear. I do think that Warner Brothers selling to, and again, let's be honest, and we'll go into it a little bit more. I think it's fairly obvious that the most likely candidate is that they are going to be sold to Paramount, and we'll have two major studios merging. And I already have issues with the Paramount merger that they just had with Skydance, which we've talked about here on the channel. I don't think it's going to be good for Warner Brothers. I don't think it's going to be good for that studio's legacy. I don't think it's going to be good for moviegoers. I don't think it's going to be good for movies. And as somebody who believes that movies are artistically and culturally significant, I think that this is an instance of abdication on the part of David Zaslav and abdication on the part of the people in charge of Warner Brothers who are basically saying like, well, we don't care about that. We want ours. We want our money. That's what this whole thing is about. And again, my view, where I come from, is a very Pollyanna. Oh, gee whiz, wouldn't it be great if the world worked this way? I understand that. I do. I understand that, but that doesn't mean I can't be upset that that is the way that the world works. And one of the reasons that I think that this is going to be very bad, again, and let's get into, okay, well, who's going to buy it now? Because I've seen some people say like, well, wait, no, they're not going to sell to Paramount because Paramount has made two offers and Warner Brothers has rejected both of those offers. Well, yes, they've rejected both of the offers that have been made. But I think the important thing to remember is that this is all part of the game. I think the first offer that Paramount made was for $20 per share. I think the second offer that Paramount made was $24 per share. And if you want to know why I believe Warner Brothers and David Zaslav so openly stated that they are for sale, it's because after this announcement, Warner Brothers stock went through the roof. Warner Brothers stock is at a 3-year high. And if you look at the subheadline here, It's gone up to a lot of analysts saying like, oh, well, we were targeting it going way lower, but with the speculation here and the possibility that maybe a merger might happen, this stock could go up to $25 maybe, which is way up from where it was. This is all a negotiation. This is all a game. This isn't David Zaslav saying like, well, I don't know if selling to Paramount is what's going to be best for the studio. No. This is all a negotiation. And what's going to happen now is Paramount's probably going to come back with another offer. And maybe that offer gets accepted. Maybe that offer gets rejected. But this is all a negotiation. There's no discussion about what the best thing is for the well-being of the industry or the well-being of the studio. This is all about maximizing shareholder value. How much money am I going to walk away with? And how much money are all the other shareholders going to walk away with? And how much can we get 50 cents more a share out of that? What do we have to do to get 50 cents more a share? Whatever happens to the studio after that, doesn't matter because they're gone. They're out. There's not going to be a spot for David Zaslav after all this is done. He's probably not going to want one. He's going to make, I don't know, $100 million and walk away. $100 million for a few years' work. That's not such a bad payday. None of it matters anymore. And I mean, look at what they did. They immediately yesterday, they raised the price of HBO Max, which they already said that they were going to do. David Zaslav was like, oh, well, what we're giving away, there's way more valuable than what we're selling it for. So they're already raising the prices, et cetera. That raises the valuation of the company. Maybe that's a coincidence. Maybe it's not a coincidence. I don't think there's any chance in hell that there is a coincidence. But I mean, let's talk about why I'm so down on the future, and especially if Warner Brothers is sold to Paramount, which I still think is the most likely thing that's going to happen. It's all about a private equity mindset. And even though Warner Brothers is still a publicly traded company for now, I think that David Zaslav approached it with a private equity mindset. I think that Paramount is now operating under a private equity mindset. And what do I mean when I say a private equity mindset? It's an approach to business that, again, is not about the long-term future of the company. It is about the short-term profitability for shareholders. So there are multiple lists out there. Go out there and look at the number of companies that were taken over by private equity and filed for bankruptcy within 5 to 10 years. Some of them even shorter than that. Now, there are some that were already facing marketplace challenges, but the number of restaurant chains, et cetera. Red Lobster is a great example of that. They were bought by private equity. They got stuck in these deals where they had to lease the land that they were on back to the private equity firm. So the private equity firm made money in general, but the business itself lost money, which helped to accelerate its decline into bankruptcy. And that's just how it works. You get bought by private equity. They slash everything. They streamline as much as they can so that they can cut costs because, again, that's better for their bottom line. Usually when that happens, the services that are provided by these businesses then also decline, which further causes the company to go further into its own decline. And eventually it just goes into bankruptcy because maybe it was already facing challenges, but it's also a lesser product. It is put on your earmuffs if you don't like this word, it is the enshittification that I talked about and that many people have talked about over the past several years. And I mean, this is a story that I saw today. Private equity is behind 70% of the large U.S. bankruptcies just in the first quarter of 2025. Joann Fabrics is one of those companies that was acquired by private equity and very quickly went into bankruptcy. And there are any number of sources out there you can find, which is that the number of companies going into bankruptcy that are bought by private equity by many degrees is higher than the number of actual companies that are owned by private equity. Private equity only bankrolls a certain percent of business. A larger percent of those businesses end up filing for bankruptcy. And I'm not saying Warner Brothers is going to go bankrupt, but I think that mindset is going to be brought to the studio and is already being brought to a lot of other studios, which is how can we make money on a corporate level, on a shareholder level, and we don't care about the service. We don't care about what we're providing. We don't care about any of that stuff. It's all about how we who own the company get rich. And like I said, I know people are going to say, well, Dan, that's just not how business works. But that doesn't mean that's how business should work. And especially when you're talking about something like a movie studio, something that's important to people, something that produces things that are important to people. You know, A lot of it is just me pining for bygone days. And I understand that those days are bygone. I have similar feelings about college football. We're not going to go into a whole sports thing, but I think that the way that college football has changed in the last 5 years or so makes it a lesser game, less exciting, less beneficial to fans and to the athletes in some ways, even though they're now able to get paid. But just the focus on money, the fact that gambling has been so heavily incorporated into sports, they're now sponsoring sports events, whereas that used to be completely separate. And I think it should be. Business has transformed to a bottom line first, consumers maybe second mindset. And I think that it's hurting everything. And I think that it's going to movies as well. So anyway, that's what I think. Warner Brothers officially up for sale. You'll see these stories that they've been turning down offers from Paramount. Quite frankly, I think it's just a matter of time. And Netflix has said, and I don't think this is a negotiating tactic. Netflix has said that they're not particularly interested in buying Warner Brothers. There's some other people that have been floated as buyers that don't look like they're showing a whole lot of interest. I think they're playing a negotiating game with Paramount, but maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe somebody will swoop in at the last minute with my Pollyanna mindset and save the day, but I don't know. I don't really think so. I don't think it's very likely. All right. Well, this has been an upper show so far, but that's what I'm thinking. That's just reality right now. All right, let's get to some of your questions. Let's see if maybe you have a brighter outlook today than I do. I hope so. And we will start with Jim One, who says, do you think GTA 6 will impact movie going next May? Well, assuming that it is going to come out, I think I'm not convinced this isn't a New Mutant situation where we keep going up to the point of release and then it gets pushed back again. Do I think that it will impact movie going next May? I think it could. You'd have to look at the specific week and weekend that it was released. I think that there would be a number of people that will stay home and play GTA 6. I know I'm certainly looking forward to it. Grand Theft Auto 6, by the way, if you're not versed, it's a long-awaited video game that is set for release next year. I think you could see an impact, but I don't know if it would be a detrimental impact in the sense of, it would sink an entire movie, but I could see it depressing the results for maybe the first weekend. Otherwise, I think people have to start incorporating other things into their lives. You would think so. There's a lot of gamers anyway, I think, that would just probably be at home gaming anyway, that are just playing GTA 6 instead of playing whatever else they would be playing. So I would say short term, yes, but I don't know if it would be a month long type thing. Let's see. Jim One says, another one for Jim One. Thank you. I think people will want to see original movies, but there are dozens coming out every week on streaming with big stars. Horror seems to be the exception. Yeah, I mean, everything is different about movies now, the way they're marketed, the way they're distributed. And it's just so tough to penetrate the culture in a way that it wasn't difficult in previous years, because you have the internet as well and streaming. And I don't just mean streaming as in Netflix, but I mean streamers on YouTube. People spend hours a day watching YouTube, and people that do live streams like this and ones that are incredibly much more successful than this one. So it's just so much harder at this point. And I've said it before, movie theaters aren't doing themselves a whole lot of favors. Charles Lai says, hi, Dan. My fiance and I watched Tron Ares in 3D, IMAX 2D, and 4DX. Have you ever thought about watching a major blockbuster film in multiple formats and giving a review on the pros and cons of each? Well, I mean, I guess if you're going to choose a movie to watch in all those different formats, Tron Ares isn't such a bad one. I saw it in regular, I think it might have been Dolby, but it wasn't in 3D. It wasn't in 4DX. That's interesting. I don't know. I haven't thought about that. I think that there are only a few movies that would make sense for. Like if I wanted to do that, for example, for Avatar, I think that would be interesting. But the other thing is, if we talk about utility, beyond it just kind of being a fun video, unless you're in a major city, I would say that your access to all of those formats is probably pretty limited. Here, for example, where I live, it's not a huge market. I've got 3D and IMAX 2D, but I don't think we have a 4DX theater. So I think that would be an interesting thing, but I think the utility of it would be a little bit less useful unless you're in a major market that has all of those options available. FreakStomp95 says, Dan, have you noticed certain streaming services work better than others? YouTube/Netflix, no issues, but Paramount is, earmuffs, dog shit. Doesn't seem to matter what internet we use. Thanks, Logan. I've heard this before. Honestly, I've never really encountered that where one particular streaming service, other than maybe a glitch here or there on a certain day, works less than the other ones do. That is not something I've noticed, honestly. I certainly have my issues with the interface of different ones. Like I hate the Amazon Prime interface. I actually don't love Netflix's new one. I thought their old one was better. So there are like structural issues with the streaming services I've trouble with, but I've never noticed a time where I've been watching one and it's worked better than another one, completely independent of any sort of external factor. Black Bag says, Dan, please, I've always wanted to know about your stay at the Riviera in Vegas with Spencer the week before it was demolished. Wow, that's going back like 10 years. Give me the lore, good sir. Yes, that was, I think it was actually 2015, because if I'm not mistaken, we were in Las Vegas when the second trailer, I think, for The Force Awakens came out. I just remember sitting at the airport watching it. I'm pretty sure that was the same trip. Yeah, so it was about this time in 2015, or no, actually no, I'm sorry. I think it was like spring of 2015. The Honest Trailers was up for an award for one of the. It wasn't like the Streamies or the Webbies. It was like an IAW TV, some organization that had an award show, and we were up for an award, and they had their ceremony in Las Vegas, and they invited us to go, and nobody really wanted to go, but they wanted to send a representative. So Spencer and I were like, yeah, sure, we'll spend a night in Vegas. I think it was like we fly into Vegas, go to the ceremony that night, come back to LA the next day. So we did. I flew to Vegas. I don't think we flew together, but Spencer and I went to Vegas for this thing, and they put us up at the Riviera Hotel in Las Vegas. And I think it was a week or 2 weeks before the hotel was going to be literally imploded, demolished. And I don't know what's there now, but so it was as close to being in The Shining as I can imagine. I think that there were maybe 10 people total working in the entire hotel, and there weren't really that many people staying in the hotel. So every hallway was deserted. It was mostly just completely silent. And this was like a Sinatra place. This was like a Rat Pack place. I mean, you could smell cigarette smoke from 1967 in the walls there. And it was weird because I think it was at the very end of the strip, and I mean, we didn't have a whole lot of free time because we were only there for about a day and a half. And Spencer and I just kind of walked up the strip a little further because when we did have time to hang out, because there wasn't much to do. And it was weird. Like I remember after the ceremony, I wanted to go to I went onto the casino floor, and it was like all the machines were on, but there was like nobody there. The bar, they had stopped restocking the bar. So there was a bar open, but it had like 8 bottles, and it had like the full bar, but there was like 8 bottles left, and you just had to drink whatever they had. It was bizarre. I've never actually experienced the death throes of a Las Vegas hotel and casino before, but I have then, and I remember that ceremony. It was interesting. There was a host. I forget who it was, but it was obvious that this was just a total paycheck gig. I'm talking like probably like a 60% effort there, and then he just disappeared after a certain point. And I remember we tied the award. It became obvious that, because we didn't really know that this organization, it became obvious that most of the other people that were nominated were friends with the people who were putting the show on. Like they all knew each other, and we were like the only people that didn't know everybody else there. And I remember that we tied for the award at the end of the night with another one of the shows that like everybody there was cheering, but none of us, Spencer and I had never heard of, but I think again, everybody kind of knew each other. So we tied, and they said, "Oh, we only have one trophy, and we're going to give it to them, but we'll mail you yours later on." Well, we never got that trophy. So we won, but we literally had nothing to show for it. That is a walk down memory lane. Thank you. I like these kinds of questions as well. Things like, tell me about Buc-ee's, or, hey, remember that trip you took to Vegas 10 years ago? Because It's stuff that I don't usually talk about here on the channel, but it's fun stuff to talk about. Charles Lay says, also between Malkovich and Fantastic Four and Monahan and Ares, seems like Disney is willing to cut anything to keep a film under 2 hours. Actors and filming aren't free. Couldn't better planning help these budgets? Yes, absolutely. That's what I think is frustrating, especially with Disney. Not just cutting scenes out of movies, because that always happens. But when you cast John Malkovich in a role, you would think that there would be a review at some point on the script level to say, hey, is this role critical before we pay an actor like John Malkovich to come and be in our movie? Same with Cameron Monaghan. I mean, he had pretty early credit in Tron Ares. That role is not a role that somebody of Cameron Monaghan's caliber had to play. So it was obvious to me he had a bigger role. And I'm sure they paid him a nice amount of money. And again, there needs to be more review at the script stage. And I think even more when it's expensive to cut actors. It's more expensive to reshoot a third of your movie. It's crazy to me how many times Disney has gone across franchises, has gone into production on a movie that is so structurally unsound that they have to go back and do a whole act again. Like, that is insanely expensive. And there's no way, if you're paying attention, as much attention to the script as you should be paying, there is no way that you can go into production and shoot the third act of a movie that's that problematic and not know it. That's just an accelerated timeline. There's not enough oversight somewhere. Yes, I think that is one of the biggest problems. And it's not just Disney. You asked about Disney. It's most studios. One of the biggest problems is that they put scripts into production that have not been properly vetted and worked on. And it's usually because they're up against a deadline and they're like, well, we got to shoot something. Not the way to make a movie. Sometimes it works. Iron Man, the first one, is an example of that. That is the exception to the rule. Zeusiful says, it feels crazy to sell WB right now when they have such a strong Oscar slate. Of course, it's only the WB film side of thing, WB Comcast, but it still feels wacky. Yeah, well, I mean, but again, what a great time to sell if you're David Zaslav. It's not about, hey, wait a minute, we've got a great film slate. The studio's kind of back on its feet. Hey, you know what? We could really stand on our own 2 feet here. No, it's added shareholder value. And whatever happens to everybody else, if they want to throw DC Films back into chaos after they're just kind of starting to get things rolling, that doesn't matter to him. He's gone. Doesn't matter. And that's what bothers me. It's that I'm not going to get stuck on this again. It's that when companies say, oh, yeah, well, sacrifices. Oh, yeah, well, there will be redundancies. That's people. That's jobs. That's people. That's work. That's effort. And it's all reduced to a number on a page. No consideration given to that as an actual human endeavor. And it's dehumanizing, and it's hurting people, and it's hurting the economy too, but they don't care because they get theirs. They don't care how many people lose their job. They get theirs. That's the thinking. It's crushing us. Not just in entertainment either. It's crushing us. Jim One says, hi, Dan. Were you an X-Files fan growing up? Yes, Jim, I was. I didn't stick with the show all the way to the end. I think I jumped off board around the time that David Duchovny left, and then I would kind of check in on it periodically. But those first few seasons that was like pop culture was dominated by X-Files for a while. That's Sunday night on Fox with like Simpsons, X-Files. That was killer. So yes, I was an X-Files fan growing up, but I have to admit I did jump off track or off board as it went along. InSheer01 says, thoughts on Horizon and American Saga. What do you think might happen to Chapter 2? I never saw Chapter 1. Chapter 2, I think, if it wasn't already in danger of sort of being stuck in limbo forever before all the stuff with the lawsuit against Kevin Costner, and I saw that that's moving forward, then even more so now, because now it's got some controversy around it. I admire Kevin Costner. He took a big swing, but I think he overestimated the appeal of it. So I'm curious to see if anyone will ever see Chapter 2. I think someone will buy it at some point, as long as he's willing to part with it for probably less than he wants. Jordan Collins 444 says, not political, but how unique was it growing up in the 90s with the president being from your home state? I feel that's the most notable Arkansan. Yeah, I mean, Johnny Cash, Sam Walton, Bill Clinton, those are kind of the big three. It was very interesting to see. So Clinton was elected in 1992, so I was 9 years old.
I was 13 years old when he was reelected, and I remember walking around downtown Little Rock on election night, which is where all the celebrations were. We didn't stay till the end, for the big speech and everything, but the atmosphere was great. And it is interesting because Arkansas was not a state that was well known, really. And all of a sudden, to have the president be from your home state, and Bill Clinton was born in my mom's hometown. He was born in Hope, Arkansas. He moved away, so there was never any overlap. And he's also older than my mom. But so it was weird to hear not only your home state talked about so much, but also your mom's hometown talked about so much and being quoted in political speeches and everything. And keep in mind, this is also right around the same time. So Clinton was elected in 92. I think in 93 or 94, the Razorbacks won the NCAA basketball tournament, which again is not something that we were used to. So it was odd as a kid to have your state all of a sudden be in the national spotlight when nobody really knew where we were from or where we even were before. And I think we've kind of reverted to that. Most people don't know where Arkansas is. Like when people are like, oh, you're from Arkansas, where is that? It's like above Louisiana and below Missouri. Oh, so where is that exactly? So yeah, nobody really knows where Arkansas is. Film Chirp 42 says, have you ever met Bucky? I'm assuming you mean Bucky the Beaver there. No, there's never been a Bucky at any of the Buckies that I've stopped at. Maybe one day, if I ever meet Bucky, you'll know about it because I'm definitely taking a picture. Jim One says, what also is hurting the theaters is TV shows used to air mostly during the week, so people would go to the movies at the weekend. Streaming changed this. I mean, the whole schedule is upside down. But I mean, also there are fewer episodes of every show, so I think that TV, in some ways, you're detached from the schedule, but there's both less of it to watch and more of it to watch. If you're trying to watch everything, there's way more. But if you're a fan of a certain show, it's not like it used to be where your show was on the air for 22 weeks out of the year. Now it's like, okay, you get eight episodes every 2 years, and you could probably take care of them in a weekend. Brian German says, do you like using subtitles when watching movies or TV? I go back and forth. I find that a lot of movies, especially if you're watching them at home, aren't mixed very well. And I don't like to watch TV super loud. Even now that I can, I'm not in an apartment anymore, but I don't like to watch TV super loud. So I will usually try not to watch it with subtitles if I can. But if the mix isn't great, then I'll put the subtitles on. Or it's big for me if I'm eating, because I like to eat cereal a lot. So if I'm eating cereal, the subtitles always go on, because otherwise the crunching would cover up what they're saying. Dylan Fitzsimmons says, I'm watching Mystic River for the first time and wanted to know your thoughts on this film. It's been a while since I saw Mystic River. I remember enjoying the film. I thought the performances were really good. I was never the biggest fan of Sean Penn's performance in the film. Not that he was bad. I just thought that he was very over the top in the movie. In some scenes. In some scenes, he's great. And I was a fan, and I'm still a fan of Bill Murray's performance in Lost in Translation. So I kind of resented that Sean Penn beat him for the Oscar, especially because Sean Penn then got another Oscar just a few years later. And it's like, well, you could have given it to Bill Murray then and give it to Sean Penn later. I remember enjoying the film, but that's with the caveat. I probably haven't watched it in 15 years, maybe more than that. Great performances, though. Dylan Fitzsimmons says, top 3 Schwarzenegger films. Ooh, boy. I mean, you've got to put Terminator 2 up there. And you've got to put Predator up there, for me at least. So that's 2 out of 3 gone already. What's that third one going to be, though? He's got so many. It could be Running Man. Depending, I mean, it's not one of his best films, but enjoyable watches. I think Commando is a really, really enjoyable watch. Yeah, at the risk of perhaps overlooking something, but in the interest of expedience, I'm going to say Terminator 2 and Predator are absolute locks. And then I think that Running Man might be my third, but it's also a rotating third, because I actually enjoy a lot of Arnold Schwarzenegger's movies. Total Recall, I think, maybe could be in that third. It just depends. The third one's mood dependent. It's kind of dependent on what I want to watch. Well, what am I in the mood for? Am I in a Jingle All the Way Kindergarten Cop mood? Am I in a serious action movie mood? Am I in a goofy action movie mood? Dylan Fitzsimmons says, favorite SNL cast members of all time? Geez, Dylan, you're making me rack my brain here. Dan Aykroyd, brilliant. Will Ferrell, amazing. Chris Farley, Adam Sandler, that kind of defined my youth. At Phil Hartman, one of the best cast members of all time. Kristen Wiig, I think, incredible. Kate McKinnon in the modern era, incredible. Jason Sudeikis, I'm a fan of. Even though the shows aren't great, I think on a sketch by sketch basis, Eddie Murphy, incredible performer on Saturday Night Live. Really, the entire original cast. You can't go wrong. Gilda Radner, Jane Curtin, Lorraine Newman, Belushi, Aykroyd, Chevy Chase. You got Bill Murray jumping in there somewhere. Garrett Morris. I mean, that original group of people was they gelled together so well, even if they were, at each other's throats half the time. I mean, those are the ones that jump out at me right now. I'm a big SNL head, so I love watching old episodes. Dana Carvey, of course. Dana Carvey. I mean, one of the most omnipresent, and somebody who's just like from show one was the star of the show. He was SNL in the late 80s, early 90s, for sure. Yeah. Jan Hooks. I thought great glue. I liked Kevin Nealon at the update desk. Norm Macdonald. I think the best person to ever do Weekend Update was Norm Macdonald. I could sit here all day and talk about SNL cast members. Those are the first ones I think of, though. Film Chart 42 says, what job interests you the most in film? So I'm guessing you mean like in the film industry. I mean, editing is what I eventually was drawn to. When I moved to LA, I thought maybe, do I want to direct? Do I want to write? But editing is what really drew me into the craft. So I think that would be, if I was going to transition to movie making, I think that editing would probably be what draws me in the most. And then I enjoy writing, but only writing with somebody. I actually find writing by myself to be kind of torturous, just because I like the end result, but I find the process difficult. It's just kind of frustrating for me, but I love writing with a partner, with somebody else. So I would say either, teaming up with somebody to write a script where it's not just me sitting in front of a computer, banging my head against the wall, trying to figure out something, or editing would be the two things I'd say most interest me in movies. Redeemer329 says, what do you think about the Ben Solo news? Do you think Disney should have made it? Personally, I think Star Wars should move on from the Skywalkers. I don't know the actual news itself. I saw a headline saying that there was going to be a Ben Solo, I think, standalone movie that Adam Driver was going to do, and they didn't end up doing it. Is there really anything more that needs to be said that wasn't said in the movies? I don't know. Star Wars got so spin-off heavy. Adam Driver's great. I think he would have made had a great performance, but like, is there a movie that we need to see that's a Ben Solo movie? Yeah, I agree. I think that Disney needs to move on from the Skywalkers, but they can't seem to crack anything else unless they're going backwards and doing stuff from their filmography. M. Moses 2991 says, what happened to TV shows releasing new seasons every year? We were just talking about this. Why do we have to wait 2+ years for a new season of TV nowadays? Even expensive shows released every year before the advent of streaming. That is a great question. Number one, I think that what a lot of people forget is that we had two massive disruptions that happened right after each other: COVID and then the writers and actor strikes, which I think lengthened the gap between a lot of shows. But even then, I agree, it is a ridiculous gap between a lot of what happens. But that's because of the limited episode count. Because what happens is a writing staff will get together, they'll shoot all the episodes all at the same time. So a movie shoot or a TV show will write everything and then shoot everything, which is a months-long process, and then edit everything, which is a months-long process, and then it'll get released, and then they'll get the team back together when all of that's done. So it's kind of done one at a time: writing, shooting, editing, release. The way that TV shows used to work, and I worked on a few of them myself for cable and for network, there was a writer's room that was actively working while the shows were shooting. So you would assemble the writer's room. If you had a show that was coming on in fall, you'd assemble the writer's room in the summer. They would start writing episodes. By the time production began, you probably have 4 episodes written. While those 4 episodes are being shot, the writers' room, the writers are still working. They're still writing the next episodes down the line. So you're in production at the same time as you're writing. It's not 2 separate things. And the episodes that are being shot are also being edited while shooting is happening and while writing is still going on as the season goes. So it was a simultaneous process. It was like a machine, and you would wrap the season, and the gang would pretty much stay together. You would have offices on a lot unless you got canceled, and there would be a 3 or 4 month gap. Everybody took a vacation. They might go work on something else, and then you'd come back and you'd start over again. You start writing, shooting, editing, release, etc. So it was all happening simultaneously. That's not how it works anymore. And so you're basically having to restart the process every single time. And maybe you're waiting for somebody to finish shooting a movie, and okay, we have to wait 3 months because this cast member's shooting a movie and this cast member's doing this other show, and that delays you 6 months. The machine used to just be constant, and now it's like building a new one every time. And that's a big part of why there are so many gaps. I don't think it's as good of a system, honestly. But that's just the way that it works, because actors aren't just going to sit around and wait, and writers aren't just going to sit around and wait while you spend months and months and months writing and shooting when you don't need them. Whereas it used to be a process where everybody was needed at a certain point in the season. Everybody was working at the same time. Writers, directors, actors, producers, editors, everyone was working at the same time. It's not how it works anymore. That's one big reason. Clay says, throwback, but let's talk about it. Do we like Joey ending up with Pacey when the whole show made it seem like Dawson was going to happen? He did get to live his dream, though, so I guess everyone wins. As somebody who did stay with Dawson's Creek all the way to the end, no. No, I do not like that. Maybe because I identified very strongly with Dawson, and I believed, and I had a huge crush on Katie Holmes as well. So it was like a double whammy to me. And I like a nice ending. So no, I was not a big fan of Joey ending up with Pacey. I was happy that Dawson got to do what he wanted to do, but seemed unsatisfying to me. Yeah, no. By the way, James Vanderbeek, I haven't heard updates on his health. I'm very, very hopeful that he is recovering. I know they did that live cast reading on Broadway a few weeks ago, and he was going to be there, and he wasn't able to because he was ill. And I hope he's doing well, because it's just, I hate to see anybody going through that. CDC says, hello, Dan. First time I used a super chat ever. Well, thank you for using it here on the channel. If you had to choose a movie studio to buy WB, which one would you like to buy it? Honestly, I don't want any other studio to buy WB, because I don't think we should be merging studios anymore. It's enough with it. But if I had to choose one to buy Warner Brothers, well, obviously I don't think that it should be Paramount. I don't really think it should be Universal, because it's I mean, I think it's better than Paramount, but I don't think it should be Universal. I don't think it should be Disney, because Disney does not need to own another movie studio. I don't think it should be Netflix, because I don't believe that Netflix would be committed to actually putting movies out in theaters. Honestly, for me, the one kind of streamer, and I think that's what we have to look at, because Sony and Warner Brothers doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me for them to merge. If I had to pick one, I would say I would have to pick Apple, only because Apple has actually shown that they are committed to releasing their movies in theaters. Movies like Napoleon and F1 and all of those. I don't think they've been great movies, but they're the only ones of the new streamers that I think would be able to buy WB that have actually said or shown that they are committed to supporting movies in theaters. And I think that that's a big part of it. So if you force me to choose, I'm going to say Apple, but I think ideally nobody. Tildra Dane says, hi, Dan. I wonder what your opinion is on the news of Denis Villeneuve not having the final cut for his upcoming James Bond movie. Love from Canada. Thanks for sharing your knowledge. I have not read that particular piece of news. I don't think it's uncommon in Bond history for a director to not have final cut. The Broccoli's always, I think, as far as I know, the Broccoli's always exercised an option over final cut. They had the ultimate say in what would go into a movie or not go into a movie. I think it's more of, do I trust Amazon to have final cut? And the answer is no, I do not trust Amazon to have final cut. I'm actually somewhat surprised. I'd have to look into that news, because there's a lot of news that floats around and you have to look at the sources. But if that's true, I'm somewhat surprised that Denis Villeneuve would sign on to not have final cut on the movie. But It's not so much that I don't want him to have Final Cut. It's that I don't want Amazon to have Final Cut. Professor Afonso says, "Hi Dan, when are you going to do a review of Picard season 3?" I mean, it's waters under the bridge a little bit. I thought about that, but honestly, I did a discussion with Terry Metalis, who was the showrunner and one of the writers on Picard season 3. That to me was kind of my review in the sense that we got to go over a lot of the things that I liked. I know I sort of teased it a little bit doing a standalone review, but time just kind of passes, and I feel like at this point the door might have closed. And I was happy with that discussion I had with Terry, which you can find here on the channel. That addressed a lot of what I wanted to talk about in my season 3 review. Primal Plasma says, do you think the quality of Warner Brothers films will drop after the sale goes through? And what do you think will happen to the DCU and James Gunn? I mean, when it comes to the DCU and James Gunn, I have no idea, and nobody does, because it becomes a whole new set of corporate priorities. It just depends on who buys them and what they want to do. Maybe they leave them alone. Maybe they bring in their own thing. It's that kind of instability that I think is bad for the business. Do I think the quality of films will drop after the sale goes through? I don't think they'll necessarily get better. They've been doing so well. That's the thing. This is the most Warner Brothers thing in the world to happen, which is that after years of instability, we're talking years. How many times on this channel, on Screen Junkies, have we talked about Warner Brothers and the fact that they just can't get it together? They just can't figure out what they want to do, and this doesn't work, and this executive got replaced. Finally, in 2025, they get it together. They have a slate of incredibly successful films. One battle after another, maybe not a financial success, but it's now an award show frontrunner. The DC universe, it seems like it's finally taking some shape. And I know that people want to talk about Superman, but I think that it was a better response than a lot of other films in DC have been. It certainly didn't sink their plans for the future. They're moving ahead. It seems like they got their feet under them, and they're immediately looking to completely destabilize all of it. I should have known. That is the most Warner Brothers thing in the world, is for them to finally get their feet under them and then yank the rug out from under themselves. That is the most WB thing in the world. Geek Factor says, hi, Dan, cheers from Poland. Just wanted to say hi. Hi, Geek Factor. And I think we're down to our last few questions. So if you want to ask a question, now would be the time, because when we get to the end of this, I may take a quick run through the rest of the comments, but then we'll wrap it up. Let's see. Black Bag says, I've got some more decades-old questions loaded up, but I'll wait till next week. Sounds good. Long live the Riviera. It is weird to think about the bed that I slept in being dust a few days or a couple weeks after I was there. Eric says, hi, Dan. Huge fan of you, your character, and your opinions. Do you think we'll ever get something as good as Andor, or is Disney taking the wrong lessons? I hope Disney's taking the right lessons, which is to really invest in a creative and believe in their vision. The thing is, I'm going to take a little drink of water here because I'm a little parched. The thing about Andor is, I feel like it's a great thing to aspire to, but it sets such a high bar, because it's not just that Disney and Star Wars hadn't really produced anything as good as Andor in a long time. In my opinion, there are very few shows that were as well done as Andor. So to reach that bar would be, hey, hit another 10-year high in the next, with the next project. So my hope is that Disney is taking the right lessons, but I also feel bad for any show that comes in and people expect, like, well, it's going to be just as good as Andor. I think you should aspire to do that. You should set the conditions in order to do that, but not necessarily set that as a bar for failure. I hope so. That's my answer to your question. I hope that we will get something as good as Andor again. Brandon Ninja says, what if Netflix buys WB? What happens to DC? Again, nobody knows what's going to happen to DC, no matter who buys it, because every executive is going to have their own specific priorities. For me, the thing that I don't like is that no matter who buys Warner Brothers, in all likelihood, whether James Gunn loses his job or not, thousands of other people will probably lose their job, which is not great. And I understand that, and the same happened with Disney when they bought Fox, and everyone would talk about the X-Men and Marvel, etc. I understand, because DC is a property that's so tied into Warner Brothers that's what a lot of people think of first. But I think there are also broader considerations, one of them being that this will a lot of people are going to lose their jobs no matter what. And I don't like that because that's happened so many times over the last 5 to 10 years in Hollywood. Sean says, watching Cheers. What do you think is the best TV set in a sitcom of all time? Many take place in homes. I think Cheers is number one. I mean, the versatility, if you want to talk about set design, because Cheers was so much of it was set in that bar, the way that they had it so that you had a big central area, of course, the bar in the middle. If you wanted the ensemble to all be there, it was easy to gather them. You could have some people in front of the bar, behind the bar, sitting on all sides of the bar. It was well designed that way. You had the office off to the side. So if you wanted to have a conversation between two characters, you could go into that private office. And then the way it was leveled, so you had the door kind of up a little bit. You could put characters upstage, and then they could speak and have their own things there. Cheers was such a great set design for a sitcom. I'm trying to think of another one because you're right. A lot of them are set in homes, and there are a lot of great sitcom set designs. But it's usually, a living room and a kitchen and maybe some stairs, etc. It's variations on that theme. Cheers is a great one. I'm struggling to think of one that can top it. But that's one of the things I love about sitcoms, and especially multi-camera sitcoms. You have to design something as a set designer. You have to design something to look functional, but you also have to design something that will allow all the cameras to get all the angles they need, the audience to see what's going on. It's not an easy thing to do. So you have the classic Seinfeld, Friends, etc. But those are a lot of that's homes. I thought Cheers was such a great one because of the design of the bar specifically. Letty Theobald just sent in a super chat. No question. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Puerto Rico 51 said, do you think K-pop Demon Hunters will ever go to IMAX and 4DX? Live in New York City, by the way. I could see it happening, especially if it gets nominated for the Academy Award. I think they're putting it back in theaters again, either this weekend or next weekend, just for a few days. So I could see that happening. I don't know. I mean, you don't necessarily have to be optimized in IMAX, but would people pay the upcharge to see it on a premium format if there was nothing kind of added? I think you'd have to do a value add to get people to pay that extra money, especially because it already will have been in theaters a couple times before then. Her son, Preciado, says, you're the best in the space. Keep up the great work. Thank you very much. That's very nice of you. Puerto Rico 51, member for 1 month, by the way. Thank you. Sinners and K-pop in theaters next week is peak. That's I mean, what a double feature that would be. Brandon Ninja says, Marvel should lean more into horror like Blade. I think that's a possibility. They've got to figure out what to do with Blade. First of all, they've done Werewolf by Night. That was well received. So, I mean, I think that's where Marvel often succeeded. When you look at Ant-Man, and I think Ant-Man did well because it wasn't just another horror movie, a superhero film. It was sort of in that heist genre, and you kind of mix genres with other Marvel movies, and it feels to me like they lost track of that at a certain point. It was just like, it's a Marvel movie, it's a Marvel movie, it's a Marvel movie. Work inside the genres a little bit more. I think that could help revive them. So I think you're onto something there. And this is the last one, unless something comes in. MMG says, which one has been your favorite sequence of any movie this year so far? It would have to be the chase sequence at the end of One Battle After Another. That was fantastic. That was one of those, I will remember watching it in a theater moments, which I don't get with a whole lot of movies, where like I remember, I can see it through my own eyes again and remember thinking, this is incredible filmmaking. So yeah, it would have to be the chase sequence from One Battle After Another. And then a close second would be the sequence in Sinners, where it opens up and you have that collision of all the different eras and music combining. That was phenomenal sequence. I love that too. Any other year, that would have been my answer. But so I think the chase sequence from One Battle After Another for this year, that takes the cake. Let's see. Let me just grab a couple questions from the comments, and then we'll wrap it up. Carlos Roleri says, hi, Dan. Is there a world where movie theaters rent their screen for an on-demand service to people? I would like rewatching whatever I want on the big screen. I think they actually do that in a lot of markets. They will rent out a movie theater for private screenings. Some of them worry about getting the rights, and from what I've heard, some of them don't. The Power Plant says, very excited for Welcome to Derry. Pleasantly surprised that Skarsgård is reprising his role. I am super excited about that. So that's something I'm going to be watching for sure this weekend. they had a thing in LA on the Warner Brothers lot, a preview event, and I couldn't do it. So, because I'm not there. So that's one of the times that I miss being in LA, but I also love being here because I get to see my family and friends and nephews and all that stuff. So that's great. Let's see. Oh, the power plant also said, remember that time when the Wachowskis made several epic movies that completely bombed? LOL. They did, but again, I think history has sort of been the judge on some of them, in the positive and in the negative. El Greco said, Dan, who's going to win the World Series, Blue Jays or Dodgers? I haven't really been watching a whole lot of playoff baseball beyond just the highlights. I know most people would say that because I lived in LA for so long that I should be rooting for the Dodgers, but actually I'm still a Cardinals fan. So I don't root for the Dodgers in the NL. I'll root for the Cardinals. I think if it's a neutral field, for me, I'm going to go with the story that's more interesting. So I would say, in the absence of really knowing the specific strengths and weaknesses of every team, I think it would be more interesting if the Blue Jays won their first series in 30 years than if the Dodgers won again. Did you hear that the director of Guardians of the Galaxy had his credits removed from his films on Amazon? They had to edit out all the guns. It's a good one. It's referring to the what we did a couple weeks ago about Amazon removing all the James Gunn or all the guns from the James Bond movies. James Bond, James Gunn, coincidence? I think not. Let's see. Amazon will edit out all the guns using AI. I think that's just referring to something else. Let's see. Alex P. Realistically, any further consolidation of the industry will make all the existing problems 10 times worse. I agree with you. A lot of the problems that are occurring right now in the entertainment industry are because of all of this consolidation. Not all of them, certainly not all of them, but a lot of them are. So yeah, I agree with you there. And then let's see, the direct night. If Paramount buys WB, we are done. Well, we certainly are done to a certain extent. Okay, let's see. I'm just trying to scan through, see if I see anything else that jumps out at me. No, I don't see anything else specifically that jumps out at me. I don't think that we've had any other super chats come in. Nope, one more. All right, one more, and then we're going to wrap up. So don't send any more. If you were planning on it, wait till next week. We'll answer more next week. This is from Letty Theobald, who says, "Hey Dan, have you watched For All Mankind? I think it's the best show on Apple. You might like it." And one came in after this. No, For All Mankind is added to the list of what I've heard are great shows on Apple that I've not watched. It sounds interesting. I would like to see it. I want to see it. It's on my list. But I think The Studio was actually the last show on Apple that I heard was good, that I actually did watch. And I think it's because it had to do with Hollywood and stuff. And so there's that extra added level of interest. So, excuse me. One day I'm going to have a month off, although that would be bad because that would probably mean this channel wouldn't exist anymore. But one day I'm going to have the time to sit down and actually watch all of these Apple shows that everyone's told me are good, because I hear so many of them are good. And then we have one from Ollie. Oh, no question. Just a super chat. Thank you so much, Ollie. And I think that's going to wrap us up for today. We came in right around an hour. Thank you to everybody who asked questions. Thank you for the deep cut questions about Las Vegas. Thank you for listening to me vent about corporate consolidation in media. I know it's not the most engaging topic in the world, but it's certainly one that I'm passionate about. Be sure to stay tuned right here on the channel. I have some reviews that are coming out this upcoming weekend. I'm trying to, and I think I'll be able to, watch Chainsaw Man, the first season of Chainsaw Man, because I'm curious about the Reze arc. So if I can get caught up on Chainsaw Man, and if I can catch a screening of the movie, then I might do a review of the Chainsaw Man Reze arc movie and the Bruce Springsteen movie I'm interested in. Plus, I'm working on a Halloween video, a horror-related video that's got to come out within the next, 9 days, because otherwise it's going to be irrelevant. So stay tuned for all that. Of course, charts next week. Unless I have some kind of interference with my schedule, I'll also be back here for the live show next Wednesday. Thank you to everybody who watched. Thank you to everybody who sent in their questions. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.